My name is Marcus Bass. I attend Lincoln College Prep. I am a senior, and I'm an employee here at Black Archives. Um, so, tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Terri Michelle Craddock Moore. I was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Have lived here all my life. Well, Beacon Hill um, was once a very special place, community to live in. Beacon Hill was once known as the Knob Hill of Kansas City. A lot of our first black professionals lived in Beacon Hill. A lot of our first black doctors, lawyers, teachers, and business owners lived in Beacon Hill. So Beacon Hill is very special to me.
Okay. And so, how long have you and your family lived on Beacon Hill, and what made them want to live in this area?
Um, my family, my husband and I, bought a house in Beacon Hill in 1994. So we have been there 26 years, and in April 2021, it will be 27 years. Um, when we were looking for a home, um, I chose to live in Beacon Hill because I was familiar with Beacon Hill. I had a family member who lived in Beacon Hill most of her life, a great aunt. And when she passed, she left the house to my mom. So my mom lived in Beacon Hill. And so I was familiar with the neighborhood in Beacon Hill, and I thought it was a wonderful place to live. And so when my husband and I was looking for a home, um, I searched and was blessed enough to find a home and we were blessed enough to find a home in Beacon Hill.
So, you mentioned that your mother lived on Beacon Hill. Did you live with your mother? So
Yes,
you were a
but
child.
she inherited the house. When she inherited the house after my aunt's death, Anna Ewing, my great aunt's death, her name was Anna Ewing. Um, um, she she left the house to my mom. So after her death, my mom moved into the house. I had when my mom moved into the house. Um, I had moved away from home. I had my own place. I had moved into an apartment. So when my mom moved into Beacon Hill, all her children, her daughters, the four of us had moved away from home. So she moved into Beacon Hill in the house by herself. Her and her brother, my uncle. The
Okay.
Beacon Hill boundaries are from 22nd Street to 31st Street, from Troost to I think it's Flora Avenue. Yes, I had. My mom was the first to move in Beacon Hill. Uh, I was the second. My family and I were the second to move in Beacon Hill, and I have an aunt that lives in Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill was so wonderful that we all tried to live in Beacon Hill. Wonderful. Like I said, that's during a time when neighbors were neighbors. You knew your neighbors. Um, your neighbors looked out for you, and so usually all the kids knew each other, played together, and as we grew up, a lot of times we went to school together. So we knew each other really well, and as far as socialization, parties, one we'd hear of one neighbor or someone we went to school with had a party, we would go. Um, Everyone was invited, and we walked. We walked to parties. We wasn't, none of these cars. No one had a car. I didn't have a car until I graduated from high school, so we were very active in our communities. I think the children were a lot healthy because you had to walk or you had to public transportation, get on the bus. So we had a great social life. Great social life. We had what you call go outside and play, which a lot of kids and young folks know nothing about. We went outside and played. And I think back on that a lot of times, and that was good times. I graduated from Northeast High School on the east side of Kansas City, also known as the northeast side of Kansas City.
So, tell me a little bit about that experience.
It was okay. I am a product of Northeast High School because of the busing situation when they had started busing. Kansas City, Missouri School District um, was we had a busing audience where children from the inner city, most of in the urban core, were bused to other schools in the Kansas City area. So it was different. It was a little bit different, but it was okay. We 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 endured. We made new friends. We got along, and we were able to graduate from high school. During that time, a lot of the children in the urban core that were predominantly going to all black schools or all white schools were suddenly made to integrate the schools. So Northeast was predominantly white, had a lot of Italian families that attended Northeast because of the area, the location where Northeast High School is located. So they just wanted to mix the schools up. So most of the children, black students in my neighborhood, were bused to Northeast. And so me and my sisters were bused to Northeast. So that's where I went to my last year of junior high school and high school, and I graduated from Northeast.
I have one more follow-up question on that. How was that explained to you that this thing was going to happen?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was so long ago. Because I'm talking about, I graduated from high school in 1981. So, but it was like a mandate that this was going to happen in the Kansas City, Missouri School District. So it was like we had no choice. And so it was boundaries set, and if you lived in a certain boundary of the city, you went to this school, and if you lived in another boundary, you went to that school, and that's how it was. That's how it went. I just retired from the federal government. I worked for the Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration. And I retired after 34 years and 1 month. I retired December 31st, 2019.
And so, what special skills or training did you need?
Well, actually, during that time, I started working for the Federal Aviation Administration back in 1985. And I believe Clinton was the president, and he had a program um, with the federal government. It was called a stay in school program. And so what the federal government would do, a lot of the federal agencies would hire people, young people who were in school. They would, if you were in school, they would hire you to work part-time. And that way, you would be learning a professional job, on a professional job, and part-time, and you would be going to school part-time. So that's how I started. I was attending junior college, and so I was hired to work for the Federal Aviation Administration part-time. And so that's how I got my foot in the door, and that's how I started my career with the federal government, and I stayed. After graduation from junior college, I stayed. They hired me permanently, and I stayed.
So you've been working that job here?
Same agency, different positions, different jobs.
And so did you make the kind of money that you needed or expected?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I got paid well for for the work that I did. On the job, there were moments of that mild racism. Well, sometimes people would, other employees would come into the office, and they would go straight to the white woman sitting behind me. And, they wouldn't speak, they wouldn't acknowledge me. And then when my coworker, the white woman, would say, "Oh, you need to talk to Terri. Terri could help you with that." And just the expression on their face when they had to come back after they had passed me, didn't acknowledge me, didn't speak to me, they would have to come back and face me and talk to me. I just, I saw a lot of that, but it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me. It was just, sometimes mild tendencies, because the agency that I worked for, the federal government agency that I worked for, the Federal Aviation Administration, was predominantly, most of the employees were white during that time. They were white, so.
So how did you learn how to cope with that, with dealing with that?
I just shook it off, because I knew who I was. And I knew they were gonna have to come back and talk to me anyway. So I just kind of chuckled inside, because just to see the look on their face. Sometimes I would talk, a lot of employees, I would talk to them over the phone, and then when they would come into the office and they would see me in person, they just couldn't believe, oh my God, I was talking to you. And I've even had black employees who used to tell me, you sounded like a white woman. I thought I was talking to a white woman. So it's the way of the world, you know.
Did your family prepare you for dealing with racism?
Yes.
How so?
I was raised to always love myself, respect myself, know who you are and who you belong to, and that you know, sometimes you just, you know, don't sweat the small stuff. Some of the stuff is small stuff, but I was also taught, you know, that it's certain things that are small stuff, and then some things you will know when it's bigger than you and you really need to do something else with that. But I just come from parents and a family, that strong black family, and we were all taught to respect yourself, love yourself, know who you are, like I said, and who you belong to, and as long as you are doing what you're supposed to do, you'll be okay.
Is who you belong to a spiritual reference?
Both spiritual and family oriented. You know, um, back in the day, your name meant something, and that's something we don't see a lot of. A lot of people in the community, in the city, knew you by your name, knew you by who you were related to. Your name meant something, it carried weight. Um, so when people found out who you were, who you belonged to, you're a child of God, uh, you're such and such's daughter, son, grandchild, it meant something. It really did mean something. And so that's how we were raised. We knew. We just knew who we were and who we belonged to. And we knew right from wrong. And as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be okay. But in those situations where things got out of hand and you weren't okay, you also knew what to do then too. So in the community, in the neighborhood that I grew up in, I feel like we were kind of sheltered. Uh, we really didn't find out about all these other things and racism and other things that were really going on in the world until like uh, we integrated, went to another school out of our area. We went to a predominantly white school. We saw a little bit of that. And then when we left home and we went out into the world and started working and everything. So growing up black was great for me because we always had our own everything, We had our own, you know, uh, places to have fun, our neighborhoods. So I'm gonna say it like this: growing up poor, we really didn't even know we were poor because we lived so well. We didn't know it. So we still could, if we wanted to, for entertainment, if we wanted to go to the movies or whatever, we did it. I mean, in our neighborhoods, we had places to go and have fun. We had friends. Never missed a meal. Had lights, gas, water, beds to sleep in. So, I had a great. I can say I had a great life, youth, growing up in Kansas City.
How do you think that integration affected that?
I think integration was not. I think it kind of hurt us in some ways because when we had our own neighborhoods and stores and shops and schools, I think we did better because it brought us together as a people, as a family. I think it inspired a lot of us to have our own, to be entrepreneurs, professionals, because we were living amongst a lot of our black professionals. We were living next door, across the street, or down the street from our teachers and pastors and business owners. And so when we start integrating and moving away from each other, I think a lot of us as a people, we forgot who we are, where we come from, how far we have come. I think we lost a lot of that.
And so how do you think that this has affected you while raising children?
My husband and I have one son, and we've always tried to raise him to be respectful, to know who you are, know right from wrong, and just to be careful out here. Also know that you're a young black male, and even though he has lots of friends of every color, just know that what some of your friends may be able to do, you may not be able to do it. So always be careful and think about self, because we're living in a world now that everybody's not valued. And as a young black male, you are not valued. So have fun, live your life, enjoy your life, but always be on your guard. Be careful.
So, what effect, if any, do you think the civil rights movement had on your life and your family?
It had a major effect on my life. It allowed me to have the type of profession that I had, to be able to work and get a living wage, more than a living wage. This is what we're fighting about and marching about right now, a living wage. And I was able to get an education, get a wonderful job, have a career. I was able to buy a home. anywhere I wanted to. When we were looking for a home, we could have bought a home anywhere we wanted to be. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the real estate agents were trying to get us to buy way out south, Grandview and places like that. And we said, no, we're going to stay right here in the urban core, right here in the inner city. So it has helped tremendously, tremendously. I look at my parents and how hard they had it coming up, and you know, a lot of them. I know a lot of people that weren't blessed to have the type of job that I had. So, civil rights movement played a very, very important part in my life. Never forget where you come from. Never forget the struggle. Never forget that you're standing on the shoulders of so many, many people. And I try to always remember that. Do we have any major institutions? Have a lot of black churches in our neighborhood. We have Bethel, African Methodist Episcopal Church, right down the hill on the other side of Purcell. We have Purcell Baptist Church. We don't have a lot because of the mass construction and everything that has gone on with Beacon Hill. A lot was torn down and a lot moved away. So right now, I would say we have two historical black churches in the neighborhood right now.
Okay, so you mentioned that buildings were torn down. What buildings were torn down?
We used to have grocery stores. We have the what is it, the Baptist Seminary? Right down the street. That's about 22nd and Tracy. It's been closed for years, but there's plans to revitalize it, rehab it, and open it up for businesses and things. But there used to be a lot in the community, in the neighborhood, but a lot of it was cited as blight and it was torn down. And so Beacon Hill right now is in this mass transformation, new housing, new building coming in, and that's where we are. It was a bit scary and exciting, all rolled into one. It was exciting because the neighborhood had kind of had a slight decline. A lot of the original neighbors were dying off. We started to see a lot of rental property in the neighborhood. A lot of the original homeowners who had children were not interested in the homes, so they were selling them off or they were renting them. So the neighborhood was in a slight decline. It was exciting. The exciting part about that time doing Beacon Hill is because we knew that there were going to be some new changes coming for Beacon Hill. Um, and we imagined that there would be some new housing, new homes, but that a lot of the original homes would be able to stay and that people would buy them and fix them up. Uh, so it was exciting and then a bit scary around that time. It's good and bad. Um, Good and bad. We have we have a lot of new neighbors now. A lot of new housing has gone in, so that's good. Um, but much more is needed. Much more is needed. We need services in the city, in the urban core, in the neighborhood. We need shops. We need grocery stores. We need eateries, diners, places, coffee shops, restaurants. So it's a lot more that need to go on. Eventually, I think it will happen. I just hope that I get to see it in my lifetime. It seems like a lot of people stay to themselves now. It seems like neighbors and people are they're not so open and welcoming um, as they were when I was growing up. Um, I have noticed that a lot of people moving into the neighborhood don't have children. So that has some type of effect on it too. The few that do have children in the neighborhood, nowadays kids have extracurricular activities. So they're in sports, they're dancing, there's soccer, there's basketball, there's swimming. So there's not a lot of children and activity going on in the neighborhood. Most neighbors are working. You know, they're working. When they come home from work, they're in their little, they're in their homes. They're, you know, so we don't see a lot of visiting and mingling with neighbors. But I have to say that my neighbors, I'm fortunate enough to have good neighbors, and we do get together. We talk over the fence. We don't have a lot of children, but we have a lot of pets. We have a lot of dogs, and everyone in my neighborhood, we walk our dogs, and so it has kind of brought some of the neighbors together, and we chit chat on the sidewalk sometimes, on the front porch. Um, so it's good. I think it's coming along. It's coming along. I have friends outside of my neighborhood, uh, and it's fortunate to have most of my friends, my girlfriends, live in the inner city. Um, I have one who she does not live in the inner city. She lives in Independence, Missouri, but we're close enough that we can stay in close contact. We're during this pandemic, COVID pandemic. Everything is a lot different, and but we have times when we can get together and visit, and that's always nice to do. So yes, I do have friends and family where we do socialize a lot, but because of what we've got going on in the world right now, the pandemic, a lot of that is kind of, you can't do a lot of that right now. It's been good and bad. It's good because most of the neighbors, especially the neighbors on the street that I live in, they were very open and friendly. Um, a lot of them, when they moved into the neighborhood, they introduced themselves immediately. Um, we formed relationships, and it's been wonderful. It's been bad when it seems like we have a dividing line between, we have new housing and pre-existing housing, the old housing. And so now we have the persons in the new housing. We have a homes association that they have created. Most of the neighbors that live in the old housing, the pre-existing housing, are not members of the homes association. So it seems like we have a dividing line between the new neighbors who are members of the homes association, because they kind of get together and they kind of do their own thing sometimes, and they have their own meetings. And then the old neighbors who have been there, and we are members of the Beacon Hill Community Council, which has been in existence for 45 years. And so that kind of worries me sometimes, because I always say to all my neighbors, new and old, and every time I meet someone, there's only one Beacon Hill. I don't care if you are part of the Homes Association or not. I don't care if you attend the the Beacon Hill Community Council meetings and involved with Beacon Hill Community Council or not. There is only one Beacon Hill.
And so how do you think that, the division has affected the climate in this area?
Well, I think if you don't reach out and get to know your neighbors and your community, it creates a divide, a barrier. And I think with a lot of this unrestness and all the chaos and confusion and the trouble comes when you don't know a person, you don't know them, you start assuming things about them. And so I think that's when you get this uneasiness and restlessness. People need to reach out and get to know people. It stops all that assumptions. And so, especially moving in to a neighborhood, I don't think a lot of of the new neighbors that have moved into Beacon Hill, I don't think they really knew the history of Beacon Hill, and I think that's been a problem also. Um, for a lot of our white neighbors, did not know they were moving into a historically black neighborhood. They didn't know this, and so they just I don't know what they I don't know what they were thinking, but it's a rich history in Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill has always been a wonderful place, a nice place to live, and I just hope it stays that way. Well, it was amazing growing up in Kansas City. Like I said, it, you lived in neighborhoods and communities where everybody knew each other. You knew your neighbors. Um, it was a sense of family. Your neighbors looked out for you, Um, they saw you when you was doing what you weren't supposed to be doing. They saw you when you were in places you weren't supposed to be, and they called you on it, and they chastised you. And then when you got home, you got chastised some more. And we've lost that. We really have lost that. So, but in Beacon Hill, if we all get to know each other, because sometimes I think people look at you like, where did she come from? Where does she live? Does she live here? Well, if we can all come together and talk and get to know each other, we'll know who belongs and who don't. Oh, that's my neighbor up the street. That's my neighbor across around the corner or whatever. And I think that's what's needed, not only in Beacon Hill, but in other communities and neighborhoods in Kansas City. We need to get out and get to know each other, uh, meet and greet each other, look out for one another, and I think we could it would make us a better city. I imagine that at one time, before a lot of the black residents moved in, it was predominantly white. Uh, so I guess in saying that, I guess it is repeating itself because uh, the predominantly most of the houses were built by white, Dutch, all nationalities of contractors. Most of the original homeowners were probably white, and when they moved out, the black African Americans started moving in. So I guess it is repeating itself um, because now the neighborhood is turning predominantly uh, white, and there's not a lot of black families that are currently living in Beacon Hill, and so it is repeating itself. I'm just, I'm praying that it doesn't become a gated community. That is my hope and my prayer. I'm hoping that Beacon Hill will remain a very diverse neighborhood. Um, I'm praying that some of the original neighbors who are now owners and living in their parents' and grandparents' and aunt and uncles' homes that they work so hard to pay for and to have will be able to stay. And I'm hoping that Beacon Hill will be that beacon of light and that example of what can happen when you bring people together, all races of people together to live together in a community. I hope we will be that example that this can happen. Just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Um, just thank you for the opportunity to 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 speak on Kansas City and my neighborhood, Beacon Hill.